Hello and welcome to today's lesson. I'm your hard-working but indefatigable teacher, Mr. Burton. You will need to watch this video and take notes as you go. You may need to watch certain parts of the video a few times to ensure complete understanding. This is your homework and I will check your notes tomorrow before we get started. I hope you learned something.
Okay, welcome to today's lesson on cross-price elasticity of demand. Now, cross-price elasticity of demand, we know that when the price of a complement good increases or decreases, it will affect the demand for the other good. So cross-price elasticity of demand takes a look at complements and the change in price and how responsive the change in demand is for the other good. The same with substitute goods. We know that an increase in the price of a substitute will increase the demand for the other good. So an increase in the price of Pepsi will increase the demand for Coke. So cross-price elasticity of demand looks at these substitutes, looks at the price increase, and measures the responsiveness and the change in demand in the other good. So specifically, cross-price elasticity of demand looks for whether the goods are substitutes or complements, and then it can give us an indication of the strength of the relationship. How strong a substitute, how strong a complement are these goods?
Cross-elasticity of demand measures the quantity demanded of one good in response to a change in price of another. If two goods can be substituted for one another, consumers will usually buy one when the price of another increases. For example, if the price of butter increases and everything else stays the same, the demand for margarine is likely to grow as consumers try a substitute. Calculate the cross-elasticity of demand by taking the percentage of change in the quantity demanded of one good and dividing it by the percentage of change in the price of a substitute. Positive cross-elasticity means that if the price of one good goes up, demand for another does too. With negative cross-elasticity, an increase in the price of one good causes the cost of demand for another complementary goods demonstrated as that. If the price of flour increases and everything else stays the same, the quantity demanded for associates will fluctuate. If the calculation warrants a small value, then the two goods are in a relation. Cross-elasticity of demand really only applies in situations where the two goods or services are related in some way. For instance, an increase in the price of shoes is not going to linearly impact demand for replacement goods.
Okay, cross-price elasticity of demand, looking specifically for substitutes and complements and the strength of that relationship. Substitute goods.
A substitute is a good that satisfies the same needs as another. A substitute can be perfect or imperfect, depending on the degree of customer satisfaction. For example, if a consumer substitutes Coke for Pepsi and is completely satisfied, then Coke is a perfect substitute for Pepsi. If a consumer is not completely satisfied with the exchange, finding some difference between the two products, then one is an imperfect substitute for the other. Consumers use substitute goods when the price of one product increases and compels them to find an alternative that's less expensive. Two close substitute goods have a positive cross-elasticity of demand. For example, if the price for Pepsi went up, so too would the demand for Coke. If two goods are not close substitutes, a change in one's price will not impact the demand for the other. Pepsi's price would probably not be affected by a rise in the cost of milk.
Right, cross-price elasticity of demand and substitute goods. Substitute goods, we know if the price increases or decreases in one of these goods, it will affect the demand for the other good as long as they're substitutes. So if we get a price increase for good A, we know that the quantity demanded for good A will decrease. That's the law of demand. And if the two goods can be used instead of each other, then we see that a decrease in quantity demanded for good A will result in an increase in demand for good B. Increase in price for good A increase in the demand for good B. And once we do our calculations, the value of cross-price elasticity of demand will provide important information as to just how strong that relationship is. It is a strong substitute or not. Complement goods.
A good or service that's used in conjunction with another good or service is a complement. Companies and economists study complementary goods to understand customer decisions and buying patterns. Complementary goods have little to no value when they're consumed alone, but when combined with another good or service, both benefit from added value. The demand and price of one product can drive demand for another product if they're complements. For example, when the demand for hot dogs rises, there will be more demand for hot dog buns. On the other hand, if the price of hot dogs climbs high enough to deter customers from buying them, the demand for hot dog buns will decrease as well. But if the price of steak rises to the point where more consumers are buying it, they may turn to a less expensive option, hot dogs. Demand for hot dogs and hot dog buns will then rise together. Many businesses looking to increase sales search for the right combinations of complementary goods. A toy store may also offer batteries, for example, or a dry cleaner can also offer timber business.
So cross-price elasticity and complementary goods. Change in the price of good A. If good B is a complement good, then that change in price is going to affect the demand for good B. So if we get an increase in the price for good A, we know from the law of demand that the quantity demanded will decrease. And if good B is a complement good, then the demand for good B will also decrease. Remember, these goods are bought together, so if the quantity demanded for one decreases, then the quantity demanded for the other good is going to decrease as well. Increase in the price of good A decreases the demand for good B. And again, how strong or weak the value is will determine how strong or weak these complement goods are. An increase in the price of one, how much will it affect the demand for the other? So important information to consider if you are operating a business. Calculating our coefficient, it's pretty similar to what we hit before. It's a percentage change in quantity demanded for good X over the percentage change in the price of good Y. And again, you can remember it's just Q divided by P. The Queen is above the Prince. Q above P. So an example calculation here. This time negative and positive numbers are important. They will provide us with information that we need to use. Example calculation here, the price of a good decreases by 10%, so that's a negative 10% decrease. The quantity demanded of good B increases by 7.5%. Our calculation, change in quantity demand of good X, we put that on top, plus 7.5 because it's an increase, divided by the percentage change in the price of good Y. Price decrease, that's a negative number, minus 10, and if we divide that out, our coefficient is negative 0.75. And unlike price elasticity of demand, this time the negative, which signals the decrease, is very important to our XED calculations. Again, our formula is based on a percentage change. So if the question doesn't give us a percentage change, then we have to go and work that out for ourselves. So if we're just given quantity and price information, then we need to go and work the percentages ourselves. So we need to work out the percentage change in price the percentage change in quantity demanded, take that information and divide it out. And again, whether it is a negative or a positive becomes, it's crucially important. So in this case, we've got a price decrease and we've got quantity demanded for good B decreasing as well. So that's a negative divided by a negative number. Negative divided by a negative will give us a positive. So what does it all mean? The interpretation of these cross-elasticity of demand values. Now, if XED is less than 0, that means the value is negative. As soon as that happens, we know it's a complement good. So an increase in the price of A leads to a decrease in the quantity demanded for B, and vice versa for a price decrease. And the higher the XED number, the stronger the complements are. So negative 0.7 is a stronger complement than two goods with an XED of negative 0.3. If XED is greater than 0, we're talking the substitute goods. An XED value greater than 0 means the value is positive, and this means an increase in the price of A, good A, leads to an increase in the quantity demanded for B. So if price A increases by 10%, the quantity demanded for B increases by 8%. We know we're talking about substitute goods. And again, the higher the value, the higher the degree of substitutability. So a value of 0.8 would say that the two goods being measured are stronger substitutes than two goods producing a cross price elasticity of demand value of 0.3. XED equals 0, these goods are unrelated. An increase or decrease in the price of one does not affect the demand for the other good at all. And if we come across an XED value which is infinite, we can say that these are perfect substitutes. Any decrease in the price of good A would lead to 0 sales of good B. The price of good A decreased by 10%, then the quantity demanded of good B would decrease to 0. Perfect substitutes. That lower price would see everybody switch to it and the demand for the other good fall to 0. Plus or minus 0.5 is a magic number. Above that we can say there's strong complements, relatively strong complements, and below that we can say they're relatively weak complements. Plus or minus 0.5, the magic number. Above that we're talking strong substitutes, below that value we're talking weak substitutes. Cross-price elasticity of demand and how it affects firm. Now substitutes produced by a single firm. So example, a car manufacturer may have two different types of models of car that they produce. Now if they drop the price of one, they really want to know how it's going to affect the demand for the other car, the other model. Similarly, substitutes provided by rival firms. So again, we can take a car manufacturer. A car manufacturer will be very, very interested to know in what happens if a competitor drops the price of a similar model, what effect that will have on the demand for the model of car that they're producing, one that's a substitute. Substitutes and mergers, acquisitions between firms. Quite often firms will compete against each other. They'll have substitute products like Pepsi and Coke. Now, two different companies with two different goods which are substitutes. If a company bought the other company out, then they would have both substitutes and they'd have much more control over the prices. Complement goods. Now, take for example a movie theatre. They would sell movie theatre tickets, plus they'd sell popcorn, and they'd be very interested to know what's the strength of the relationship between these two complements. So if we drop the price of the movie tickets, how many more movie tickets are we going to sell, and what effect is that going to have on our sales of popcorn, the complement good? So if a firm produces a line of products that are essentially similar, that the firm considers a price elasticity of demand when they make pricing decisions. For example, General Motors has many different models of motor vehicles under a variety of vans. So if it decides to discount the Volt, for example, it needs to know how sales of the Chevy Bolt, the Cadillac CT6, Buick, etc. will be affected. So a price decrease for the Chevy Bolt, a large increase in quantity demanded for that car, could result in a large decrease in quantity demand for the substitute product, the Cadillac CT6. And if the Cadillac CT6 is a high margin good, then that decrease in demand is going to hurt the firm's profit margins. They're selling more of the low profit margin Chevy Bolt and now less of the high profit margin Cadillac CT6. Now, it's not enough to know that the different products within a line of goods or services are substitutes for each other. It is necessary to know the strength of that substitutability. So again, this is low margins and high margins. What effect will the decreasing the price of a low margin product have on sales of a high margin product? Rival firms, the cross-price elasticity of demand from their own products and that of rival firms. So for example, GM, an American car company, very interested to know the XCD between its brands and models of those rivals such as Toyota, Nissan, other Japanese car manufacturers. So if General Motors has strong product differentiation, low substitutability between its products and its rivals, then it may be relatively unaffected by price decreases with rival products. However, if that XCD is high, then General Motors is going to need to quickly review its prices when a competitor such as Toyota lowers their prices. They'll need to do that in order to protect the firm's share of the market. They will need to drop prices quickly. So if the price of Toyota Prius decreases, quantity demanded for that model increases, does it have a large impact on sales of General Motors' other brands?